Hi, good evening, everybody. I hope you are well. Hi, John. Hi, Scott. I hope you're really well. Do you know what? While we're waiting for people to come, I don't know whether you got your whiskey there. I've gone for a new one. I haven't poured it yet, so I've actually not tried. This was given to me the other day for any of the whiskey drinkers out there. This is what I will be sampling in a moment. For those whiskey drinkers out there. As you can see, I've never tried this, so we're gonna crack it open if I can get into it. We're gonna crack it open and see what it's like. Scott, are you a bit more of a bourbon man? Fair enough. Whiskey is definitely my preference. So let's see what this is like. Okay, if you haven't got yourself a drink, get yourself a drink, get yourself a cup of tea, get yourself a glass of water, whatever it is. It doesn't have to be whiskey. It doesn't have to be alcoholic. It can be whatever you like. I personally am going to be going for an Aberlour Speyside single malt Scotch 12-year-old whiskey this evening while we go through the Derby. Okay, so that was the one I went for. That was the whiskey of choice for this evening. And I'm just going to have a quick taste while the last few people drop in and join us. Whether you're on Facebook or YouTube, welcome. Let's see what this smells good. Oh, yes. Oh, yes, that is lovely. Okay, wonderful. So we are going to be doing a deep dive this evening into the Derby, the Kazoo Derby, no less. And if you're over on Facebook, welcome. You can join in the conversation by leaving a message in the comment section below this video. If you're on YouTube, hi, over on YouTube, you can join in the conversation by chatting in the chat box to the right, which is actually this way of the video. And get involved with the conversation. Chat with me, chat with everybody else who's here, and let's see who we're going to pick out in today's racing. Evening, Trevor. Thank you very much for joining. And if you've just joined, drop a message to say hello. Just drop a message, just say hi. Now, if you're over on Facebook, you're not going to be able to see the YouTube comments. If you're over on YouTube, you're not going to be able to see the Facebook comments. But wherever you are, I'll be able to see all of your comments. And I will appreciate every single one. And thank you for joining me this evening. John, cask strength did I read? Let's have a look. Yes, it is indeed cask strength, John. You're absolutely right. Will it affect my judgment? Fingers crossed not, or maybe it will affect it for the better. Who knows? Trevor, 12-year-old Blackbush for you. Trevor, I think you missed it. This is the one that I am going for this evening. Okay, right. Let's jump into the race. Okay, I'm just going to bring up here on the screen. We've got the race course. Now, I've got to apologize. You may be able to hear my children in the background over the next 15 minutes. It is their bedtime. They're going to bed. They are not always appreciative of bedtime. They don't always appreciate how lovely it can be to get into bed. So if you hear them in the background, that's what's happening. That's why you can hear them. They will be discussing the pros and cons of bedtime. Okay. So now you should be able to see. My screen in front of you. Give me a message. Let me know if you can see that okay before we get started. Give me a message. Confirm you can hear me okay before we get started. And then we're going to jump in and get cracking. All right. While I'm waiting for you to confirm that you can see my screen, because there is a bit of a time delay, I'm just going to open the race, the Kazoo Derby. Now, I've not actually looked at this race yet. So this race is going to be completely new to me, completely fresh. Evening, Keith. Thank you for joining. Okay, great. The message is about to come in. I can see. Thank you over on YouTube. P-Now. Thank you, Mark. Thank you, John, for saying it's all good. That's great. That also gives me a bit of an indication about how far behind the time delay is currently working. We've got a couple of minutes behind here, and that's fine as long as I know. Awesome. Okay, so we brought the race up here, and let's jump in. Now, this actually is not too bad. 12 entries. 12 entries. The Kazoo Derby, the first ever Kazoo Derby. having taken over from Investec as sponsors, Kazoo, the new sponsors of the Derby. So as we know, this is a championship race over flat turf. It's a Class 1 race. At the moment, at this time of the evening, they are predicting the ground tomorrow to be good to soft at Epsom. Now, this race is run over 1 mile 4 furlongs and actually 6 yards, as we can see here. And the prize money for the race, a whopping £1 million. And I just want to mention quickly how exciting it is to see prize money like that. Racing is getting really behind putting money back into the prize pools to try and re-accelerate it back to where it was pre-lockdown. So that's really exciting that we've got that here. So we got that here, and I love that. Now, from there, we go on, and we're going to come back to this in a minute, but we go on a little bit. You're going to notice on my screen, the Betfair odds are all 0. This is because we haven't yet picked them up from the Betfair site because it's a bit early, but we will go and have a look. However, because we're doing this the night before, I'm actually not going to consider the Betfair odds until the very end, because I don't want to skew mismatched odds before we've made our own decisions. Okay, so we're going to go that. We'll jump into Betfair at the end once we've made our decisions elsewhere. So where do we begin? Now, there's a lot of different places we can start, but we obviously got to get rid of those eliminations first. Okay, that's the very first thing we actually need to do, is to get rid of, of the eliminations. And there's a number of ways we can do this, but I think today we're going to start by possibly looking at, let's start by looking at the PR odds. And that's this column here. And we can see the PR odds here, okay? And this is our tissue line. So this is our own in-house odds line. It's based on our own probabilities. And we are going to be deciphering those to decide if we think they are actually accurate in this race or not. Now, the first thing I'm going to do before I actually look at the odds, I'm going to click on them, and I want to get these scores up. And this is really important because you'll see here now, I've got a whole, the columns have changed. We've got an orange header. And that means, the orange header means we're looking at a breakdown for a particular rating or factor. And that rating is the PR odds, our tissue line. Now, what we've got here is the score. And then next to the score, you'll see the probability column. This probability column is made up based on the score each horse has achieved. Now, this is telling us that Bolshoi Ballet has a 37% chance of winning this race according to our raw probability. Okay, this is according to our raw probability. Now, we'll notice after that there's a big gap. There's a huge gap, in fact, to Max Sweeney, I think that actually is a huge gap to Max Sweeney and Mo Harfeth as well, which are both kind of next to each other in the field. Then we come down to Hurricane Lane, which isn't that far behind at 10.65%, before a slightly bigger gap again to John Leaper and then the rest of the field. Now, this is really, really important because Bolshoi Ballet, let me just highlight Bolshoi Ballet here. Bolshoi Ballet has a significantly higher probability on this particular score than any of the other horses. And we always want to be looking for these breakpoints. Okay, we want to be looking for these breakpoints in ratings where there's a big gap between the horse at the top or the top 2 horses, the top 3. It doesn't matter how many horses, but we're looking for the big breaks between horses in the field. And Bolshoi Ballet is the first major big break here. Now, based purely on that score, we can see that the raw odds are 2.7. Okay, so the probability that we've given this horse would indicate the odds for the runner should be about 2.7. And potentially anything above that would be a bit higher. Anything below that would be sort of no value. And I'm actually just going to change the public odds here to 0. Okay, so we can see that over here. And if you're not sure what the public odds setting means, drop me a question, drop me a message in the chat, and I'll come back to it at the end, and I'll tell you what that means. Now, the next thing we want to look at is the contenders column. We can see that these are the 3 contenders because they are the top 3 horses. But there's quite a lot of potentials in this race. There's quite a lot of potentials. But we're just going to mark the 3 contenders. And we're going to make a mental note. Bolshoi Ballet, significantly stronger. Okay, I'm going to close that down. Now I'm going to go through the rest of the ratings on this race card. Now, on this race card, this is the standard race card. We might jump into another one in a bit, and we might not. We'll see how we get on. I'm going to look at the 5278. This is a combined rating. Okay, this is a combined rating. Now, Hurricane Lane comes in at number 1. And the reason this is called 5278 is because between 52 and 78% of the top 4 horses win in these races. And the range is 52 to 78% because that depends on the race criteria. So some race conditions are going to be nearer 52, some race conditions are going to be nearer 78. But I want to put Hurricane Lane in because that horse is also near the top in the PR odds. We saw that was in the potentials, although not a contender. What's interesting is that Mo Harfeth and Max Swiney are kind of much, much lower. Okay, I'm going to move on to days since last good race. I'm going to sort this from high to low because Gear Up hasn't had a good race for 253 days. And One Ruler hasn't had a good race for 225 days. And that's a long time. Now, usually for me, that would be an immediate disregard. We'd eliminate those horses. But on this case, in this situation, I'm not actually going to do that. And the reason for that is why? The reason for that is that we can see here in their form, these horses have only had one race so far this season, which means that they could be gearing up to this particular race. And also, if we go back to the previous season, we can see that actually they had some good races. We had a 2, a 1, a 3rd, a 1st, a 2nd for One Ruler, and we had a 1st, a 4th, and 2 firsts for Gear Up. So that's why I'm not going to remove them in this particular case. Now, I'm going to skip over the next couple of ratings that we've got here, and we're going to come to PFP. And here, again, interestingly, we've got One Ruler sitting at the top, Aldiyar coming in 3rd, but then there's not much between the rest of the field. It kind of goes from 1509 to 1507 down here, 1506, and then there's a few a little lower. So that doesn't really give us much more information than we've already got. Okay, now next I'm going to run a Monte Carlo simulation on this, and while this is running, I'm going to come over and I'm going to drop into the messages to see if there are any messages, see if there are any questions so far before moving on. Now, in this simulation, so I should say, if you do have a question, drop it in now. If you haven't done yet, if you've got one already. Now, I'm just going to remove from here the Betfair odds because they are all 0, so they're not going to help us in any way at the moment. Everything else is going to stay in here as normal. Okay, and I'm just going to leave all the settings as default, and we're going to run a 1,000 race simulation. Hi, Andy. Thank you very much for joining. Great to have you here this evening. Thank you very much. Keith, thank you for confirming you can hear. That's absolutely wonderful. Now, if you've got any messages while this is running, if you've got any questions, drop them in. And don't forget, please hit the like button, the share button. It makes a huge difference to the Race Advisor and the presence on Facebook and YouTube. So please do hit those likes, hit those share buttons as well. Okay. 66% of the way through. Now, so far we've got Bolshoi Ballet, potentially the strongest. And then we thought Mo Harfeth and Max Swiney were going to come in, be good. But since going a little bit further, they've possibly, the risk for those have increased slightly and our comfort with them has decreased slightly. Hurricane Lane has kind of come in as a possible as well. And now we're going to see what the Monte Carlo simulation orders these horses as. So now, interestingly, we can see here that actually Bolshoi Ballet is coming in kind of 4th. That's really interesting. Mo Harfeth is coming up at the top, but One Ruler, Hurricane Lane, very little difference between them. We can see that by the position of the silks. And you'll see as we go down this simulated race card, you'll see the position of the silks move in, which means the horses are less impressive. Okay. So very little difference between Mo Harfeth, One Ruler, and Hurricane Lane. Bolshoi Ballet coming in 4th, and then very little difference between Bolshoi Ballet, Use Spirit, and Max Swiney. And then there's a bit of another gap. So that gives us a little bit of a concern, possibly around Bolshoi Ballet at potentially short odds. and maybe gives us a little boost in consideration towards Mohar Feth. Okay, I'm going to come out of this for the moment, and we may well come back to that. We may well come back to that with a different race card. Okay, now I'm going to have a look at speed graphs. Okay, let me just bring them over here so we can see them. Okay, so here are the speed graphs. 1 mile 4 furlong is the distance. Good to soft is the ground. So let's put good to soft, and let's put good, and let's also put soft. It's a flat race. Okay, 1 mile 4 furlongs. Now I've just got to work out what that distance is in yards. So 4 furlongs on yards is 880 yards. So we need to add 880 yards to 1,760, which is a mile. That gives us 2,640 yards for the distance. Now, I'm going to put that about 2,400. I'm going to put the max distance at about 2,850. Okay. So we want a bit of scope around. And when we put this filter in, you can immediately see very few horses. We've got one over here, Youth Spirit, back in the 5th of May, 2021. And then we've got 2 up here, one race, Adiyar and third round. But there's not really enough for us. It's not really enough for us to check. So I'm going to reduce the minimum distance down to 2,000 yards instead. And that starts to give us a little bit of a better picture. Now, next to each horse's name on the right-hand side of your screen over here, you're going to see a number in brackets. This number is a dynamic speed figure. This number tells us how fast or what speed figure we expect the horses to have based on the conditions in the filter we've just set. So that is flat turf races on good to soft or soft ground over a distance of between 2,000 yards and 2,850 yards. And we can see instantly, third round, 146. Adiyar, 142. Now, we hadn't considered these 2 horses previously. So we're already now thinking maybe we should come back and have a look at these. Interestingly, we've got Hurricane Lane coming in here. So while the average for Hurricane Lane is lower, primarily because of this speed figure down here on April the 16th, actually in its last race, May the 13th, it put in a really good speed figure on flat turf over good ground at a distance of 2,256. So that's strong for Hurricane Lane. Looking down here, Max Swiney is right down here. That's not so good. Not got much. That kind of gives a little bit of concern. Bolshoi Ballet right here. Again, not horrendous, but not strong enough to possibly counter what could be short odds. And I say could be short odds because we are saying in our tissue line that this horse should be around 2.7. Usually when we say that, the odds of the actual horse can be quite short. So possibly not going to have value there, but we'll see. The other horses that we've already mentioned aren't showing. So we're going to come back to the dynamic filter. And now I'm just going to remove all the distance conditions, try and get more races on this graph. Okay. And here we've got some more races. And that goes from, I think the first race is kind of around 2020, yep, June 2020. And obviously we've got the most recent races. So first of all, let's zoom in on the most recent races and take a look at what we've actually got here. Now, I'm going to hide... No, I'm not going to hide anything, actually. I'm going to scroll down and say, Max Swiney down here, still nothing to shout about. Bolshoi Ballet, still very much in the middle and really nothing to shout about from a speed perspective, which gives a little bit of concern. Mohar Feth hasn't had a race that recently. Where are we? Is back over here. Here's Mohar Feth. So again, not bad, but very much in the center. Very much in the center of the pack in terms of speed as well. Moving down, Hurricane Lane, again looking good, primarily on that last race. The previous kind of really not good. So this Hurricane Lane is going to have to perform at the top of its ability to be competing here. So this kind of has mixed up our entire picture. Let's zoom out a bit further now. Let's zoom out a bit further and look here. Max Swiney, really, really good over here. And then last race, not good. Now, the reason we want to zoom out is because we can see this pattern. This horse came, had a long break from October 2020 until recently. And in fact, if I now remove all the conditions, we'll be able to see a picture of that properly. So you can see here, Max Sweeney came here, and that's the blue line down here. And then this horse just declined. This horse has just seemed to decline, which gives me a bit of concern. I wouldn't be so worried if there was only one declining score because the horse has just come back. But because there's another decline after that race, although it was on softer, heavy ground, that has to be taken into account. But there is a little bit of concern there. Now, up here, we've got One Ruler. And One Ruler has looked to be very strong all the way along. But let's have a look at the race conditions. So if we hover over, we're going to see the race conditions. Flat turf, good to firm. Slightly shorter distance. Flat turf, good to soft. Shorter distance. Flat turf, soft. Shorter distance. So this horse, One Ruler, is looking to be strong. And our primary concern about One Ruler is going to be distance. And we're going to come to that when we look at the horse's individual form. So we don't have to worry about that right now. So we should be adding One Ruler into our consideration. Okay. I'm just going to go and mark One Ruler over on the race card. Continuing to move down, we've got Mohar Feth here. And again, this horse, now we've removed everything, the yellow line right in the middle, looking pretty strong, pretty consistent. Last race kind of improved as well. Flat turf, good to firm, but over the same distance. So again, good to firm. Flat all weather, back over here, good to soft, but a shorter distance. So potentially looking nice and strong from Mohar Feth here. Potentially even stronger than Bolshoi, in fact. Now we're starting to dig into the form of these individual horses. Hurricane Lane we've already talked about. And which others have we selected? Mohar Feth, One Ruler, that's all of them. So are there any other standouts that we can see here? Not really. The rest of the field seem to be pretty close. There's no other standouts we can see. Okay, I'm going to come back now to the race card and reload that. Okay, while that's reloading, I'm just jumping over to the chat. Hi to everybody who has joined since I last said that. Hi to Porky's Discounts. I would love to know what discounts you are offering at Porky's Discounts. Because, I mean, if it's something to do with pork scratchings, I'm a big pork scratching fan. Graham, hi, thank you to have you. Smith's Glenlivet for you, Graham. I am drinking this beautiful whiskey here. Aberlour this evening, 12-year-old, cask strength. It is going down a treat. You do not have to drink whiskey. You do not have to drink alcohol, water, tea, coffee, orange juice, apple juice. Anything is fine as long as you're enjoying it. Raoul, thank you very much for joining this evening, Raoul. Great to have you here. Thank you very much indeed. And I will come to the question afterwards, Raoul. I can see the questions. If you've got any questions, please do drop them in the chat. I will come and answer any questions about this race, about Race Advisor, about horse racing in the chat afterwards. You can try me on other topics, but I may not be able to answer them. Okay. So here we are. So I'm just going to summarize where we've got to for those folk who have recently joined us. So far, we've gone through the race card. We started with our PR odds, our tissue line. We picked out Bolshoi Ballet as being the strongest. And then we went through and added a few other runners in. We've just finished looking at Speedgrass, which has actually put a little bit of doubt around Bolshoi Ballet, as did the Monte Carlo simulator. So two elements there have given a bit of doubt around Bolshoi Ballet. However, they've given strength to Hurricane Lane and to Mohar Feth. So those are two horses that kind of risen in our estimation. Max Swiney very much sitting in the middle now with potential, but maybe some distance issues. And One Ruler has come in as well with potential, but distance issues. So that's where we're now sitting. And that's our current position on the race card. And as we know, this is going to be competitive. We're going to go ahead with that frame of mind that we're expecting quite a lot of runners. So I'm going to change over now to a different race card. This is a custom race card. And you'll see me bring out this race card a lot in live streams because it contains a lot of ratings. It contains far more ratings than I would ever recommend any put on a race card. And it only does that for live streams because it allows me to kind of group everything together without jumping between race cards. And that's because usually on the live streams, we're looking at these very competitive feature races where we may need to jump about and some of our usual techniques may not work so efficiently for what we're actually trying to do here. Because usually when we look at a race card, we're trying to find value bets, we're trying to find a long-term profit. When we look at a feature race, when we're looking at a race for fun, purely for fun, for entertainment, we're looking to find the winner. And there's a very different mindset around both making a long-term profit and a feature race like this. Okay, so I've just changed the race card over because I want to have a quick look at a couple of other figures. Now I'm going to sort by PFP again and look at one ruler. I'm looking for 1503 is the lowest potential that horse could have for PFP score. This is a confidence level, and I just want to check against the highest, and they all have much higher than that, so there is nothing to worry about there. So I'm now going to look at this rating, which is a competitive PFP score, just to see the order of horses. And I'm going to go through this quite quickly because actually what I'm trying to do here is I'm just trying to get an impression of where horses stand from different ratings, which cover different categories. So they're going to be form, there's going to be speed factors, there's going to be class factors. And we're going to look at the horse just from a standpoint of where in the field it is fitting for various form factors. I'm not going to explain every single rating in this live stream. If you've got any questions on the rating, please ask me. But I'm not going to explain every single rating in this live stream because there isn't time to do that. But we can see here, we got a third round Adiyar kind of sitting near the top for this particular rating here. The rest of our horses are all pretty much in the center, but Mo Harfeth for that has just dropped down a bit. But that has got time decay, which means time is important. We know Mo Harfeth hasn't had a good race recently. I'm going to do the same for speed class, average competitive speed class. And again, third rounds at the top and Adiyar third down. One ruler looking good in the second place. And then we've got Hurricane Lane, Bolshoi, Ballet, Mo Harfeth, and Max Winnie. So again, they're sitting pretty much middle of the pack to the top of the pack, and then there's the rest of the field underneath them. Moving over, looking at the projected speed, one ruler Mo Harfeth coming in, and that would tie in exactly to what we were seeing on the speed graphs. Bolshoi Ballet in the middle, again tying into what we saw on the speed graphs. However, Max Swiney and Hurricane Lane are actually looking lower than we possibly would have expected from the speed graphs. But we also know that Hurricane Lane in particular was kind of much lower until the last race we put in a good figure. Average over the last 90 days, one ruler sitting near the top, Mo Harfeth, Bolshoi Ballet, Hurricane Lane, Max Swiney coming down again. But that's, again, some of these horses haven't done much racing in the last 90 days. So I'm going to look at the ground now. Speed over the ground. One ruler, Mo Harfeth, and Bolshoi Ballet. And again, this is tying in exactly to what we saw on the speed graphs. Hurricane Lane, Max Swiney have not been able to do an average over the ground, unfortunately. There's not enough speed figures over this exact distance for me to actually consider that. So I'm just going to keep moving on. Days since last good race we've already covered, and interestingly, what I was saying about one ruler, and we can see here, days since last good race, days since last one, they're very close together, and that's because the horse hasn't really raced yet this season. Okay. I'm going to keep moving on now to the PFP points 1, 2, 3, and 4, and I'm looking for them to be increasing on each one, exactly like you can see here from one ruler. 0.77, last one, last two, 2.59, last three, 5.56, last four, 7.43. Now, the actual number in this example doesn't matter. What we're looking for is a gradual, a steady increase over the last four races, which is exactly what one ruler gives us. It's also exactly what Mo Harfeth gives us. It's also exactly what Bolshoi Ballet gives us. And you see this in super competitive races. You see a lot of horses doing this. In less competitive races, there are far less horses that have this consistent improvement. In fact, Adiyar is there as well. Pardon me. Adiyar is there as well. As is Youth Spirit on a smaller level, as is Third Realm. But we're looking for the horses we've spotted so far. Hurricane Lane as well. But interestingly, at the bottom, we've got Max Swiney here, who actually we haven't really seen this for. And there's now quite a number of doubts about Max Swiney, so I'm just going to remove that horse from our shortlist for the time being. Now, so far, that kind of enables us to say, at the moment, Mo Harfeth, One Ruler, and Hurricane Lane to me actually look to be the strongest. Bolshoi Ballet has definitely got possibility, but there are a few doubts about that horse in terms of comparison to the other runners in the race. Now we're going to jump into the pace, and then we're going to look at each individual horse of the four that we've currently got. Now, before we jump into the pace, predicted pace race is to be slow. Okay. Now, this is what we're predicting the race pace to be tomorrow, slow. And that means that these races, you can see here, when I click on this, as an explanation of exactly what that means and what types of horses you're going to be looking for. But in summary, a slow race means that we're unlikely to get a leader or an early presser, at least not stand out. And we're going to confirm this in a minute manually, because the predicted race pace is obviously an automatic prediction, and we can go in deeper into the numbers to actually decide whether we agree or not. But so when no horse wants to take the lead, we're going to potentially get a slow pace in the race. And in these races, mid-pack horses are the horses that can actually suddenly take a lead if no other runner wants to. Now, that doesn't always happen, but that can happen. It is something to look out for, and we're going to look for that in a minute. Now, if a mid-pack horse can take the lead or is potentially going to take the lead, that horse is very, very likely to win in this race, especially considering this race isn't particularly long, 1 mile, 4 furlong. It's not a sprint, but it's really not a long-distance race. So that's something that we need to watch out for. It's those mid-pack horses. Now, I've opened the pace here, and you can see we've got the orange headers again. And I'm going to sort by total pace column. And we can see here we've got Southern Lights and Hurricane Lane, 1.331, Max Swiney, 0.92. The running style of these horses, the horse's preference for position in the field, that's not where we're predicting the horse to be today. Okay? The way we look for where we're predicting the horse to be today or tomorrow, in this case, is the total pace column. So we can predict here that Southern Lights is likely to be in the front group with Hurricane Lane, Max Swiney. Now, if Hurricane Lane can get to the front, and there is a possibility Hurricane Lane could get to the front if everything goes right for this horse, then this horse could do very well. And the same actually goes for Max Swiney, although we have had some concern. Our concern with Max Swiney is the continual downward trajectory of its recent performances. Bolshoi Ballet mid-pack is going to be, One Ruler mid-pack going to be. So that also makes these two pretty strong. So again, that backs up our consideration of Hurricane Lane, Bolshoi Ballet, One Ruler. Now, Hurricane Lane we do have some concern about, and the primary concern is soft ground, but we'll come to that in a minute. So Bolshoi Ballet, One Ruler, where we expect. Now, interestingly, Mo Harfeth coming here towards the back of the pack, not right in the back, but the back of the pack. And we're going to need to look into some of his form to see if that's a position he tends to like. And we'll jump into that right now. So we're going to open Mo Harfeth's race history. And let me just bring that up on the screen for you. Just got to bear with me. I've just got to swap over into the tab. Here we go. Bear with me 1 second while I bring that up for you. Okay. Here we go. So now you have on your screens, the race history for Mo Harfeth, and we can see this horse hasn't really had very many runs. 5 in total. Now, let's look at the conditions of the race. So, today's race is £1 million. Now, this horse has never been in a race anywhere near that class. It's on flat ground. 4 out of the 5 races have been on flat ground. And it's won 2 of those races by 5 lengths, 1.5 lengths. And in one race, it was competitive at 1.55 lengths from the winner. And in its very first race, not so good, but that's kind of to be expected. Now, in terms of the distance, the last 2 races were 1 mile, 2 furlongs. And that is similar. We do have 2 furlongs more to run in today's race. But there is still kind of comfort within that, and it's carrying the same weight. So that's kind of likely to be okay. The concern for Mohafeth, as we can see here, was on the ground condition. Is it going to like the potentially softer ground? Now, we've got a 1 mile race down here, good to soft ground, and the horse was carrying 5 pounds more than it was carrying today, and this was back in October, but the race was a very, very low class race. If we hover over the horse's previous race data, we can see that it soon tracked the leader and then didn't get any extra inside the final furlong, but it was also the horse's only the horse's second race. Then we can see the other races. Remember, we wanted to look at this horse. We wanted to see if its pace position was going to be comfortable towards the back and then let go towards the end to catch up. And we can see here that in the race at Lingfield, this horse was restrained midfield, ridden, and then switched out wide on the last furlong and quickened up to a win. In its second to last race, it read cleanly and kept up keenly, I should say. That will be the whiskey taken account there. And then in the last race, it was close up and then ran on comfortably. So actually, we've only really got one race here where the horse performed well, and it was from the middle of the pack. So there's a bit of concern potentially around the position of this horse. But the running style that we think the horse prefers is closer type. So while there is a bit of concern over it, as long as the odds account for that, Mohafeth has potential in this race. There is concern around good to soft ground, so we have to bear that in mind. Moving on to One Ruler. Okay, One Ruler. The first thing we notice about One Ruler is we've got a 227k race, 127k race. That is significantly higher class racing than Mohafeth has ever been in. The next thing we notice is good to soft ground. The horse was only beaten by 0.75 lengths. And soft ground, the horse won by 1.75 lengths. We've also got good races down here and good to firm races where the horse was competitive. So again, the ground shouldn't be an issue for this horse, and neither should the weight. The concern for this runner is going to be the distance, because the horse has got to run another 4 furlongs than it is used to. So let's come in and have a quick look at the in-running comments. So in the last race, it tracked the leader and then pushed along, but didn't get any further. It kept on at the same pace towards the end. That's a concern because that's likely to be the position the horse is going to be in today. And this was in a 227k race. Next, we got prominent, close up, challenged, and then had every chance inside the final furlong. So again, that shows us that possibly this horse can be in the position we're thinking it's going to be in tomorrow and do well on good to soft. But is it going to be able to do that with an extra 4 furlongs? That's the question. And then we got another race here where the horse won, but it was towards the rear of the field. And caught up in the last mile. Sorry, caught up in the last furlong. So, One Ruler, there is a concern at the distance. And the concern is primarily that we haven't seen any evidence that this horse can perform over 4 furlongs longer, which is significantly longer than it has previously raced. Now, if it can, there is also a slight concern about its positioning. But it's only slight, because in some races it's been in a position we think it's going to be in tomorrow in terms of pace, and it's performed okay. And in other races, it's been in the position we're predicting it to be in tomorrow, and it's not performed okay. So that's not to say the horse is not going to be able to perform in that position, but rather to say we have to account for that when we look at how we're going to bet in the race in terms of our bet structure. Next horse, Bolshoi Ballet. 4 races. Again, slightly lower class races than we have for One Ruler, but higher than Mohafeth. But only just higher. One thing we have seen is this horse has pretty much always been competitive. Every race is being in Bolshoi Ballet has been competitive, which is why this horse would have been scored so high from us in the probability. And I haven't looked at the market, but I assume this horse is probably going to be favourite for this reason. And it won by 6 lengths last time out. over 1 mile 2 furlongs, which is very similar to today's distance, carrying 9.5, which is more than there's going to be carrying in the Epsom Downs at the Derby. The previous race was on good to firm ground, 2.25 lengths, but we do have 2 races here on yielding and soft, and both of them have been competitive. One the horse won, and one the horse was only beaten by 2 lengths. So, and that was its first race. So actually, this horse is likely to be able to perform well on the ground. It's likely to be able to perform well over the distance. How's it going to perform from its predicted position in the field? So led early, pushed along, regained the lead, disputed the lead early, stayed on, chased the leader, and then pulled on. Okay, so that horse likes to be chasing the leader and then taking on. And that's exactly the position it's going to be in. So this has to raise at Bolshoi Ballet again in our consideration. And the last horse is Hurricane Lane that we're going to look at. Then I'm going to jump over to see if there are any questions. Then we're going to jump back into the Betfair market and see how we may structure our bets. Hurricane Lane. 3 races. The last race, 94k, decent quality. 1 mile 2 furlongs, similar-ish distance. Won by 0.75 of a length. Now that's a contended race. And it's over a similar distance. And we can see that it repeated that in the lower class race back on the 16th of April this year on good ground, where it won by 1 length. And it won by 2 lengths on good to soft ground. So the horse is going to be okay on the ground. The horse is going to be okay on the distance. When it won on good to soft ground, although it was over a mile, it was carrying 9 stone 5. Tomorrow it's going to be carrying 9 stone and it's going to be running over 4 furlongs. We're not going to expect that to have a huge impact. If the ground gets really soft tomorrow, potentially there could be an issue. Hurricane Lane, we're expecting to be near the front, if not leading. Looking at the in-running comments, we can see race wide early, tracked leaders, and then challenged. Led after 2 furlongs, and chase leaders. So again, the position for this horse is likely to be okay. So in summary, let me just come back to the race card. In summary, what we're seeing here is potentially 4 horses that we think are the strongest. There are definitely other horses that can contend in this race that have potential. Third Realm, Adiyar, Max Swiney, these horses have potential, but there are 4 that we think are likely to be the strongest horses in this race. From these 4, Bolshoi Ballet looks to be, although initially our opinion of Bolshoi Ballet decreased slightly, it does, however, in retrospect, look to be one of the strongest. However, Hurricane Lane also looks to be one of the strongest as well. These 2 horses look to be very strong. Hurricane Lane, there is still a bit of concern over the soft ground, but as long as the ground doesn't get too soft, it is likely to perform okay. Now, Mohar Feth and One Ruler, there are both a couple of doubts about. Now, that doesn't mean they can't contend in a race. They absolutely can. It just means that we have possibly a couple of concerns that we want to be considered before we place our bets. We need those odds to be just high enough to make the risk worthwhile for us. Okay, now I'm going to drop over into Betfair in a second, but before I do that, I would love to know which of the horses in the race you like the most, if you've already bet on any, if you like any of the ones that I have picked out so far, and what your thoughts are. Drop that into the chat now. If you're on Facebook, that's the comment section. If you're on YouTube, that is in the chat section to the right of your screen. Put those in now. We're going to jump over to Betfair. We're going to have a look at the market. We're going to see how we think this race is going to play out. Okay. Right, I'm going to come over and see if we've got any questions here. Okay, coming down. Doesn't look like we've got any questions at the moment. Marcus Ellis, who wins? We're going to have a look at that in a minute. Raul are questions answered by myself or the help desk. If you email the race advisor, the help desk will answer questions they can help with, stuff that is specific to horse racing or race advisor software and ratings. I will answer myself. So that's how that works there. Raul, as a designer of women's shoes, Raul, you're a designer of women's shoes. That is what I used to do many years ago. I used to design women's shoes. We should have a chat about that at some point. John, should we not pardon me, John, should we not consider John Leaper with Frankie on board? You wouldn't put it past him to do an Oaks Derby double. Okay. Now, interesting. Now, John Leaper didn't jump out to me in any way. So, and I feel I should explain here a little bit. Now, that's not to say we shouldn't consider John Leaper. And we possibly should consider John Leaper for that reason. However, I very seldom consider trainers or jockeys on horses. And the reason for that isn't because that doesn't work. Isn't because you can't make it work when you look at trainers and jockeys. And there are lots of people who only start with trainers and jockeys and do very well with that. The reason I don't personally do that is because for me, people are much harder to assess than horses. Because people may have a bad day, may have a hangover, may have had an argument with their partner, could have just woken up on the wrong side of bed, tripped up, fell, stumbled, whatever, I don't know. But we've got all the emotional side of things. Now, that's not to say that horses can't have that, but generally it will be simpler than humans' emotions. And that, to be honest, is the primary reason why I tend not to use trainers and jockeys, because I find that harder personally to assess. But that is not to say we shouldn't consider John Leaper. But there was nothing that stood out. And I'll just have a very quick look at John Leaper on the speed graphs. And looking at the speed graphs, John Leaper actually sits right in the middle. Right in the middle. So with the very, very base glance, John Leaper sits right in the middle. And if we open up, the Monte Carlo simulator. Sorry, I've refreshed the page for the screen. I'll run that again. I'll open up the Monte Carlo simulator to see where John Leaper sits there as well. Ian's going for Hurricane Lane. Okay, let's see how we can bet here. So this is the live market at the moment. Bolshoi Ballet is the favourite, which is kind of what we expect. Max Swiney coming in second favourite just at the moment, ahead of Hurricane Lane, before fourth in the market, Mo Harfeth, and then John Leaper. One Ruler coming further down at odds of 21, which kind of ties in with what we were thinking and our concerns about it. And for me, that's actually a good enough indication that I'm probably going to miss One Ruler and move that out of my betting. And that's not to say that the horse can't win, just that I don't think the risk is going to be worth it for me. Now, that leaves me with Mo Harfeth, Hurricane Lane, and Bolshoi Ballet. Hurricane Lane, Bolshoi Ballet being the favourites, Mo Harfeth having a couple of concerns. But Mo Harfeth, if those concerns can be overcome, could be very dangerous. I'm going to jump into the place market before making any decisions. Bolshoi Ballet 1.55 in the place market, Hurricane Lane 2.52, Mo Harfeth 2.96. In the four place market, 1.38 for Bolshoi Ballet compared to 1.55 in the three place market. Hurricane Lane, odds of 2, Mo Harfeth 2.32. Without favourite. Now, this is interesting. We've got to take into account that currently there's only £384 matched in this market. But Hurricane Lane, odds of 5, currently being offered without the favourite, which is funny. Mo Harfeth, odds of 6. If we come back to the win market, you see, Hurricane Lane is 7.4, Mo Harfeth 10.5. So currently in the markets, I would actually wait to see. This market's got a 225 grand or 228 grand against it, so that's not so bad. So if we just put those three on for the moment and checked out a Dutch bet just for £25 stakes, for argument's sake, you can see here next to the names that for a £25 stake, if we Dutch those three horses, we've been making back about £16 after commission. So we've been making back somewhere around about 70%, I think that is, roughly 75%, something like that. Which actually I think is pretty good. I think that's pretty good. And actually, for me, that's going to cover most of the field. Now, John Leaper is obviously a potential there, but I tend to have a bit of a concern in these big races with only doing Dutch bets, and that's because so much can happen in these races where you've got so much competition. Now, John Leaper on the Monte Carlo simulator is actually quite a way down as well. So for me, I would leave it, but that's not to say the horse can't win. So the Dutch bet, I'm not sure about. Looking in the place market at the moment, we've got 2.5 to 2.96 on Hurricane Lane and Mo Harfeth. In the 4th place market, we've got 2 and 2.32. There's very little money matched currently in these markets. Let's just jump over to the sportsbook for a second and see what's being offered in the sportsbook. It's just going to give us an idea of kind of what's going on. Okay. So here we are in the sports market. Now, I almost never use this market because they don't let me. So, but let's see what we've got. Bolshoi Ballet, 65 coming into 5 to 4. Hurricane Lane, 13 to 2, 7.5. Mo Harfeth, interestingly here, John Leaper. No, it's actually it's drifted. It's just drifted. So, Mo Harfeth is 6.5. 6.5. As opposed to 10.5, I should clarify. So this horse is drifting. Mo Harfeth is drifting. We can get this horse at odds of 10, 10.5 on the exchange. Hurricane Lane currently odds of 7, sitting on the exchange at 7.4. And Bolshoi Ballet 6 to 4, which is 2.5, sitting on the exchange at 2.72. Looking in the place market here, the 3 place market is 1 divided by 3, 1 to 3, so that is about 1.3. So actually the place market, 3 place market, is significantly better on the exchange currently. And the 4 place market obviously is also going to be much better. For Hurricane Lane, we've got 5 divided by 4, which is 2.25 on the 3 place market. And again, 2.52. So all the way along, the exchange is better. This is a tough one. How to structure the bets on this race is tough. Let's come back to the exchange for a second. $4.30 Epsom, right? But see, because I'm wondering about 80-20 bets here. This is where I'm at. I'm wondering about 80-20 bets. This is what's going through my head. Because the Dutch bet is fine. I'm quite happy with the Dutch bet, but this is a very competitive race. Now, while I think there are potentially issues with Max Swiney, that doesn't mean I don't think the horse has the potential of winning. And I don't want to do a Dutch bet that includes that horse, because you'll see if we include that horse, we literally cut our profit in half. and then it's starting to become not worthwhile. So the choice here for me is a Dutch bet, but we're going to kind of back it up in the place market. Or we do 80-20 bets in the place market, or potentially we just go for one runner. But I'm not very comfortable with one runner. And I'm not sure Bolshoi Ballet, while Bolshoi Ballet looks to be the strongest, there are a couple of questions, although they are smaller questions. And at 2.72, the difference in odds between Bolshoi Ballet and Hurricane Lane is just too big. So 80-20 is really my preference. Now, 80-20 works where you place 80% of your bet in the place market, 20% of your bet in the win market. You can see here on a £25 bet, that would be 80% would be £20 in the place market. Now, you can see here, if we place that bet and the horse won, we make £11 profit. And that's fine, because we would be betting £5 in the win market. Now, £5 in the win market would be covered if the horse didn't win by our place bet. And that's the most important thing. That's kind of the saver of the 80-20, okay? And you can see if we did it the same with Hurricane Lane, we'd be making £30 on the place market from our £20 bet. £30 profit, as long as the horse placed. which would more than cover the win portion of the bet if it didn't win. But you see, the issue with place bets, and this is where it gets possibly a little complicated, is the issue with 80-20 bets, I should say not place bets, sorry, 80-20 bets, is if you start doing multiple ones, it doesn't work. You can see here, if we did 3 80-20 bets, we've placed £60. We would need either both Hurricane Lane and Mo Hafeth to come in to cover just the place portion of our bets. If Bolshoi Ballet came in, either on its own and only one of the other two, we'd get a £40 profit, a return. No, sorry, a profit. We get a £40 profit. So we would cover it just, but it would be very close. I'm tempted to actually just go. I'm actually tempted to just go for an 80-20 on Bolshoi Ballet. Because an 80-20 bet on Bolshoi Ballet would actually net, if the horse won, for our £25 bet, we'd win £11 in the place market, and in the win market, we make another £8.60. So we walk away with just under £20. So we walk away with about 80% return, or 80% profit, which is really good for a horse at odds of 2.72. And I am tempted to just do that. However, I do think the odds on Hurricane Lane and Mo Hafeth are actually quite good. So how am I going to structure this bet? Just going to look at the full place market again. Oh, look, and while we've been talking, the AVB market's dropped in between John Leeper and Max Sweeney. Currently nothing there. If you haven't seen my video on the AVB market, I strongly suggest you check it out. Right, coming back to the full place market. Only £4,000 matched here. I actually think in this case, let's just work through this one more time. I think in this case, oh, this is so difficult, this one. This really is difficult. I haven't had a conundrum like this for a long time on bet structure. Usually when I have a conundrum like this on bet structure, I tend to leave the race alone. If I'm totally honest, I will tend to leave the race alone if I have a conundrum like this on bet structure, because it means that there is too much competition going on and I'm not actually sure enough over the horses and the strengths of the horses. And this is where, so when you get difficulties over bet structure like this, it is because the risk versus the odds are too closely aligned across too many horses. So we get this problem because actually Bolshoi Ballet looks strong in some areas, but there are a couple of doubts. Doesn't mean it's not going to win, but there is that risk of a couple of doubts. The odds feel a bit short there. Hurricane Lane looks good, the odds look good, but we have some slightly bigger doubts. Mo Hafeth is the same. And so when we start looking at them, we kind of go, well, we kind of want to cover a few of these horses because actually there is a risk here of all of them. And actually, there are no odds screaming out at me across anywhere that, wow, these are really good. There is nothing. I'm not coming in here at Bolshoi Ballet going, wow, I can't believe these win market odds or these place market odds. They're really good for the risk on that horse. I'm not going, wow, 7.4 on Hurricane Lane or 10.5 on Mo Hafeth in the win market. This is great because the risk for this horse, I would say that actually, these odds quite accurately represent the risk. And Bolshoi Ballet is possibly a bit short. And that's why I've got an issue over the bet structure. And as I say, when you get this normal day-to-day, in day-to-day racing, you should actually skip, you should move on, because that means that actually you cannot identify a good enough reason The odds are not good enough for any of your potential selections. The odds are actually not good enough compared to the risk. That's what that means. So let's just. The other option is, of course, do each way. But I am gonna do a bet structure in this race because it is a feature race. It's a fun race, so I am gonna do a bet structure. I just want to make it clear that normally I would move on in this in this situation when I couldn't be sure over the bet structure. Bolshoi Ballet. Okay, this is the each way market, and Bolshoi Ballet is odds of 3, which means we're getting 1.4 in the place market. So we're getting a bit more on the win, but less on the place. Hurricane Lane and Mohafeth is just not going to work for us. It's going to be much better in the standard market by quite a long way. So I'm definitely going to do a combination of place and win. I'm actually tempted to just do place, you know. Just see what that looks like. £25 stake. If we did all 3 to place, we'd have to get at least 2 horses placing to cover our costs and make a profit. If one of those horses was Bolshoi Ballet, we'd still make a loss. So here's what I'm going to do. Here's how I will structure this, because actually there's only 2 ways I think we can really truly structure this because of what we we're just talking about with risk. I think either we've got to go for a win or an each way on both. There are 3 ways, actually. Sorry, 3 ways. Either we go for a win or an 80-20, I should say, on Bolshoi Ballet only. That's it. 80-20 on Bolshoi Ballet, none others. Or we go for 2 80-20s on Hurricane Lane and Mohafeth. 2 80-20s on Hurricane Lane and Mohafeth. And I'm going for the 80-20, but there is risk here. There is definitely risk here. So 80-20 on Hurricane Lane and Mohafeth. That's the second option. Third option is a Dutch only bet across the 3 horses for one of those to go in. Now, that is the higher risk option for me, because actually we know there is a possibility for Max Swiney. We know there is a possibility for Third Realm, One Ruler, potentially Adiyar, although at these odds possibly not, and John Leaper potentially as well. So there are a lot of possibilities. So for me, the Dutch bet wouldn't be the one. That puts it down to Bolshoi Ballet on an 80-20, or Hurricane Lane and Mohafeth 80-20. And actually, I would go for, in this particular case, because it's a fun bet, I'd actually go for these 2. I'd go for Hurricane Lane and Mohafeth 80-20, which to a £25 stake would be £20 on the place, £5 on the win. And that's assuming £25 stake on each horse, so total £50 stake. If you're doing a £25 stake across the entire race, that would be £10 on the place for each horse and £2.50 on the win for each horse. And just to clarify, that would mean if one of these horses placed, we would recover our cost of our stake. There wouldn't be much profit, but we would recover the cost of our stake. If 2 horses place, we will be into a nice profit. Not huge, but a nice profit. If 2 of the horses place only, neither of them win, will be roughly about £29-30 profit to a £50 total stake. So pretty good profit. And then obviously if one of the horses was to win, you can see here, we then be making a really nice profit. So that's how I will. That's how I will do it. That's how I would do it. That for me represents the least risk while getting the. Oh, sorry, I didn't mean John Leaper. I meant Hurricane Lane. The least risk comparative to the best chance of getting a nice return. I think Bolshoi Ballet is possibly actually the strongest horse in the race, and could win, but I would be expecting Hurricane Lane or Mohafeth to come into place. You could also do that in the place market, and the odds would work there as well, I'm pretty sure. But you'd want to wait until the 4 place market is actually properly formed before doing it, because there's only £4,000 in there at the moment. We want to wait till the market's actually formed a bit better. But you can see here, we need the odds on Hurricane Lane to rise a bit in the 4th place market. And actually, this is quite interesting. You see, it's always interesting to jump about because look, if I come over to the 3rd place market, Max Swiney is 2.44, Hurricane Lane 2.52. But in the 4th place market, currently, Hurricane Lane actually has a lower odds than Max Swiney. Usually, this is an indicator that that horse is going to drop, so that Hurricane Lane is going to drop in. So I'll keep an eye on that, and ideally, we'd want Hurricane Lane actually to drift out a little bit if we're going to do the 4th place market. But that is how I'm going to structure that bet. Okay, I'm going to come back over now to the chat, see if there's any questions. If you've got a question, pop it in the chat now. I'm going to go through it. If you've got any question on the race, you've got any questions on the Race Advisor. If you are not yet a member of Race Advisor Pro, you can join Race Advisor Pro at raceadvisor.co.uk/join. All the details are there. Please go check that out. John Wiseman, John over on YouTube. For those of you who are on Facebook, John's over on YouTube. He's done an £18 win bet on Bolshoi Ballet for a £30 profit. He's done a £6 bet on Hurricane Lane, I think that is. And a £6 win bet on Mo Harfeth, total stake of £30. So John's gone for a form of a Dutch bet, but a structured Dutch bet where it's weighted towards Bolshoi Ballet, but we've also got a bet on Hurricane Lane and Mo Harfeth as well. Would love to hear from you. Would love to hear how you are betting in this race, and I'll hold on for a few minutes to hear how you're betting in this race. In the meantime, if you've got any questions, please do drop them in, and we'll hang them out for just a couple more minutes while we do that. Now, while we're waiting for any more questions, please just take a second to hit the like button on YouTube or on Facebook, wherever you are, just below the video. Just hit that like button. I'll be really, really grateful if you would do that. It makes a big difference to us over here. I will hold on for another minute because I know there is a 2-minute delay on this. So I'm just going to hold on for one more minute while I wait for that delay to come through, just to see if there are any more questions. Scroll back through and see if we've got any other questions on there. Okay, I don't think we've got any more questions for this evening. So I'm going to say thank you so much for joining me. It's been great to be here. I hope you enjoyed the session. Good luck for the Derby tomorrow. I hope you are on the horses that win or that make you a profit, more importantly. I'll look forward to seeing you in the next live stream. Have an absolutely wonderful weekend. As always, please stay safe. Please stay healthy. I look forward to seeing you very soon. Thank you for joining me. And don't forget to spread the love about the Race Advisor. Thank you.